The new year is just around the corner and everyone's putting down goals and making new plans. However, some might be down in dumps or even stressed due to how the last year went, and if they'll fail themselves this year, again or for the first time. Lucky for me, I already wasted a whole art year and more, repeating the very same mistake, so I'm hoping that I won't be wasting my 2025.
Today, I want to 1. Document these mistakes and recap my past attempts at studying, and 2. List out all the conclusions and lessons I came to by making them.
They have been very helpful for me and maybe will help someone else out there too, preferably with a shorter amount of time wasted. The first part might be too long, so I feel like to just go for my takeaways. You can use these timestamps to fast forward to the second part. Ever since I decided to study art more seriously, I knew I had to practice perspective, and I had just the idea to cheat through it. I didn't want to draw buildings or boxes. I was only interested in drawing bodies, so I could get to final animating bodies. That's when I had the greatest idea of studying perspective by rotating bodies. You can also put the bodies in boxes and shoot 2 birds with 1 stone. This is exactly what I believed last year and even before then, after which I decided to start my studying perspective for 1 month plan, right there and then, only to quit and postpone it several times for a year straight. Now, a big part of it has to do with my dogshit discipline. There were a lot of wrongs with my studying method, which could have avoided lots of wasted time. I know I keep saying I failed this and that, but how exactly did I fail? Do I just mean I didn't get better or improve at all? Well, the answer is a no. In fact, I did get better at art, including drawing bodies, even though how better I got is up for debate. Let's take a glance. So for this time, it'll only include perspective body studies. Since I've attempted other studies and practices regarding bodies, it might not give the whole picture. Back around the spring of 2023, I did some test studies. At the time, all the drawing I did was just daily figure sessions. The obvious problem in these was that I didn't know how to draw boxes. Though I knew that the line should be going towards the same point, I was so foreign to it that every time I tried to draw a box, my hands will default to a parallel corners one. I quickly put the study on shelf and went back to daily figures. Now, I keep trying to prep for this practice, which was a huge cop on my end, but it repeats a lot. I started doing some of my daily figures with 3D shapes instead of just drawing the bodies. I also did another prepping practice, which was doing figure drawings in digital. I figured it'd be best to do the actual practice digitally as it is easier to fix stuff up and for the time lapses, which can be checked back to look for mistakes in my process. But that was about it up until late August of 2023, where I started doing mirrored figures. In a lot of these, I'm pretty much procrastinating and avoiding the scary stuff, simply leaving it at the reference drawing. September 2 ends with me being too scared to attempt anything or take one step out of my comfort zone. At this point, I was self-aware of my discomfort-induced avoidance, and I couldn't think of a way to move beyond this obstacle. However, I did try out some methods to help it, but they all lacked foundation. I tried drawing boxes, quickly quit it because it made me even more confused. I think I was extra dumb that month, because at no point did I ever just look up how to draw boxes on YouTube. I was mostly confused with the size of side planes. This struggle of mine is extra important to keep in mind because it lingers on for longer than you can imagine. The end of October was nearing when I caved in and continued on with mirrored figure drawings. The first one of these I was actually very proud of. Even if I knew it wasn't the most accurate, to me it still looked like a realistic human body, and that was more than enough. Though the others not so much, mainly due to me picking very bad references and not taking the time to visualize the pose. I want to point out one of these in particular since it clearly shows my incomplete understanding of the fundamentals. Here, I tried to draw a box, but only the front corners converged towards the same point, while the corners on the back are completely neglected. I also tried tracing shapes over a reference for the first time, but I didn't find it to be helpful. It was just boring. And just like that, November and December passed with no progress made. January and February with no drawings at all. 1. Because I started other studies. 2. Because every perspective study I made left me even more confused than I was before. March comes and I feel like trying my hand at it once more, without any changes to my method. I had watched some live streams from KSM and a few videos on perspective, so I was feeling pretty confident. The first mirrored pose was decent, nothing too challenging or outstanding. The second one, though, left me depressed. I just did not understand why it looked so flat and found a solution in moving on. I think this was one of the few correct decisions I made during this journey. If only I had moved on every time a study did not work out, instead of trying to fix it for days, only to then quit for days, resetting all the progress and motivation I built up. Things could have been so much different. But alas, the past is in the past. The next pose is a sitting one. It was very challenging, and the results actually looked pretty convincing to me at the moment. I was finally trusting myself, which got completely overshadowed by the disappointment the next pose gave me. I assumed it would be a piece of cake since it didn't look that different from a standing pose, but the foreshortening I failed to see messed me up so bad. So I took 4 days away from studying and came back with another standing with foreshortening pose. Though still showcasing my insecurities, it turned out way better than the previous one. I quickly moved on to the next one. I tried out a method with a ground base to ease my trouble with rights and lefts, and I guess it kind of helped. Now, the next one, a very challenging pose for me, and it surpassed all my expectations. I even made a 3D version of the pose to compare with it. I was so proud of myself, so I don't understand why I had a massive downfall right after. To be honest, a big part of that proudness might be coming from the me today, but there's just no explaining it. So here's me trying to draw a box multiple times, rotating but not changing width, after taking a 10-day long break. I then tried to animate a box floating in space. As you can clearly see from these frames, my brain was not working. I drew even more incorrect boxes. This is the second time I fumbled right after doing something unexpected. After this, I finally obtained a new brain and proceeded to watch a video. I'm so thankful this video exists. Basically, it teaches you how to rotate a box, just like the title says. You draw a box, draw a circle around the corners, move the corners on the circle, connect the dots, and you are done. I animated 2 boxes using the Perspective Assist tool on Procreate. I then had the ambitious goal of drawing body parts in these box animations. I tested it with a shoe. The result didn't look good as an animation, but my goal was for it to look like a shoe in each separate frame. I also once again utilized the ground-based method, but even more refined. It really helped to have these guidelines since it is easier for me to lose my way and forget what's the next step. After doing shoes, I moved onto the upper body, and next came feet. Here you might have an inkling of what went wrong. Shoes and feet are in fact very similar, so I quit doing the foot halfway through and started doing leg parts, which are just cylinders. After spending almost a month wasting time doing nothing, I tried to use the same box animation to draw a pose, which didn't go as intended, leading me to do 4 sides of the pose, then leading me to quit using this box animation altogether. I had a new, groundbreaking practice in mind. I had drawn multiple differently shaped objects as turnarounds, and I was going to use Brawl Stars characters, which are the perfect candidates, because not only do they have simple models, I can also turn them around and take screenshots easily. My plan was perfect. So, why is this whole month empty? Well, it didn't go as expected. It never does. I tried and tried only to realize I still didn't know how to draw boxes. I went back to zero and started practicing basic perspective. I just sat down and drew boxes, boxes, and more boxes, which to my surprise was actually fun. I also came across a post talking about this book. The main thing I learned from it was how to calculate the size of side planes so that they don't randomly go longer or shorter based on how I'm feeling that day. Since the book helped me so much and I was reminded of that one video, I thought maybe I should look up for structured learning materials. I also decided to follow along the book, but quickly went back on my feet because it had way more information than I needed at the moment. So I went to the good and old drawbox.com. I also remembered this website from years ago and finally learned how to use it. So now that I knew how to use it, I just started doing 5 daily boxes right after doing Pose Maniacs. They are actually fun, though I believe they'd be much more fun traditionally, but I needed the time lapse. In the meantime, I also tried my hand at the poses in boxes practice once again. Other Java box practices and the box practices from other artists. I unfortunately don't learn very quickly. I seriously believed I finally got my lesson and could accomplish something with them. While I was writing this, I fell into all habits simultaneously. Funnily enough, making these taking way too long due to my inefficiency. So right as I'm writing this part, I already got over that hurdle and even had some improvement afterward. So, what conclusions did I come to? The main takeaway that I won't be able to utilize for at least a while is that you should consider following books, online or offline courses or workshops if you have the means to. I think it is more prevalent with younger people, but when we try to learn something, traditional methods might not be the first thing that comes to our minds. Of course, you need to choose wisely and have self-discretion, but having a structured study plan created and mostly proven to teach something to his followers is a comfort I tend to oversee. I didn't and don't have the means to do that, and I assume a big portion of self-learners don't either. So the rest will be mainly catered to those situations, while they can definitely apply to the general as well. What can we do without money? Well, we replicate their situations. Another reason that young people might not think of traditional methods first is that there is just about everything on the internet for free. There are many art curriculums available. You don't have to follow them to a T, but having them in some rusty corner of your folders might come in clutch when you are lost. This is the one I reference the most. After you have your curriculum or just a general order of subjects you would like to learn, find and consume the learning materials you will need for the subject at hand. Do not endlessly consume. You'll find that a lot of the information is repeated. Take just enough of information and make a schedule of the exercises you need or want to do. I like to keep mine daily because days are just way much easier to keep track of. Here's an example of how I plan nowadays. So as I mentioned already, I reference this curriculum by Radio Runner a lot. I decided my first subject to be bodies because it's both the subject I draw the most and the subject I have trouble drawing the most. My next subject will be heads. After that, I have a general list of subjects I want to tackle, such as light and color, composition, backgrounds, character design, painting, and many more. I don't have a concrete order I want to follow just yet, and that is perfectly fine. I have maybe months until I'm finished with heads. I can take the time and also let my at-the-time interests influence it. My hierarchy of needs might also change due to these piece practice I try to do here and there. Once I had my first subject decided, I thought of an order of things I need to learn to best master it. So for bodies, I do perspective, anatomy, and then body types. I haven't decided where to put movements and poses yet. After this, I came up with a practice method that suits me the best. I wanted to get pose references and draw them from other camera angles, building on top of boxes. Now this was way out of my league, and every time I attempted it, I hit a roadblock. Eventually, after much wasted time, I decided to level down and draw neutral stunning bodies in different angles. My brain turned back on, and I even went to get some information about perspective and boxes on YouTube, which were a big help. I finally put my plan into motion. I had other roadblocks here and there, and if you want to hear about them, you can go back to the recap part. After a month of doing these, I even put myself to an exam, and now I'm mostly done with the perspective part, at least to the standard I wanted to achieve. Now I'll move on to the next part. I'm not as dumb anymore, so my first action was to get information. My approach will be a bit different, but you get the gist of it. Decide your subject. Decide what needs to be learned for the subject. Gather information. Come up with practices or find some made by others. Decide on an amount and a comfortable schedule. Follow it consistently. And you're done. Go back and look through your studies and be proud. You could even make a journal entry applauding yourself. At least I do. And here I'll mention some unorganized tips I had. Sometimes the exercise might be just way out of your league. Don't be afraid to level down. Also, sometimes you might have just overshot your shot. Forgot about learning the basics altogether. When you're having a hard time but you don't know the reason why, check to see if the basic information regarding the subject has been handled. Other times your exercise just was not well thought out. I don't know if it's something personal because I decide my exercises based on what I assume should teach me to do something, and not based on anything proven or tried. So I might find myself trying to study something in perspective, without any vanishing points, wondering just exactly why I can't get it right. This is definitely to be avoided. If you are anything like me, you might have to learn to study before studying art. Don't fret and just keep pushing through. You'll discover what works for you along the way. I don't know what the correct term for people like me is, but for now I'll just use chronically undisciplined. If you're chronically undisciplined, just don't talk down on yourself for failing. Try and try again. Some will eventually stick. This one might be a bit subjective, but share, online or offline. You'll get a sense of accomplishment for having published something, even if no one sees it. You finished and now it's out. You can move on to the next one. Also, you're bound to get seen by at least someone if you use proper places. Social recognition is really powerful, and you should not be ashamed for needing some of it. Just make sure that you are not dependent on the numbers.
And have built a strong image of self.
Able to recognize parts you did well and parts you did not, all the while not letting it alter your image of self. No matter how behind you are, it is always better to take it slow and one step at a time. Notice how making videos made me quit doing studies all the time. This is because I'm not used to either. So attempting both at the same time made me hit my brain capacity and shut down. Know your limits and adjust to that. This doesn't mean you have to constantly push away stuff you want to do to a later date. Maybe attempting them at different days will do the trick for you, or maybe different weeks. Planning and expecting this ahead will save you the energy and the mental pushbacks of having failed. So for example, when I was making wigs, I should have waited in between different studies, or taken a week from studies, then came back to them after I was finished with the video. So as I mentioned in the how I plan part, I've actually just finished studying the very same subject this video was on for a month straight. I didn't do a huge amount of work, nor did I see any groundbreaking improvements. I even took a 1 week long break in the middle while making another video. But the fact that I managed to go as long as this, consistently, on a practice that actually requires actively thinking about your lines, rather than just mindlessly copying from real life, was a moment of celebration for me, as pathetic as it sounds. Before this, I've been able to do stuff like daily painting photocopies, daily sketching from references, as long as a month or even longer. But whenever I tried to do an exercise that wasn't a reproduction of sorts, I'd throw a toddler tantrum, take a few days off, go back to reproduction studies, feel guilt, try to go back to active studies, and finally repeat this over and over again. I hope my experience can maybe help you avoid more of these hurdles and reassure you that these are completely normal and at least one other person in this world has gone through them too.